everybody. Welcome to the Rundown with Ramon. Thanks for being here today. We have another amazing episode with another amazing expert professional, overall cool guy, I would say, my new friend, Tony. Tony Martignetti. I think I got that right, Tony, but you'll correct me in a minute here. Has a brand new book out, Campfire Lessons for Leaders, where Tony provides a toolkit for business leaders and professionals in any industry who feel unfulfilled and uncertain about what's next for them. Tony, welcome to the Rundown with Ramon. I'm glad you took a bit of time to be here with me today. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm so thrilled to be here. This is going to be a fun conversation.
I know it is for sure. Tell me, Tony, did I get your name right? I know before we were recording it, you told me, but I can't remember if I did it right.
You did great. You did great.
Okay,
all
great.
Good.
Tony, right at the top, can you just tell us who you are, who you serve, a little bit about you and how we can reach you? Say that for us real clearly, and then we'll dive into the elements of how you can help the Rundown with Ramon audience. But right at the top, repeat who you are, who you serve, website or something like that so people can find you, and then we'll get into the tips.
100%. So first and foremost, I am a leadership advisor to outlier leaders. And these are people who think outside the box. Most of the time they're in the tech industry, but there are people who don't think like other people, and that often gets them in trouble. And I help them to make a big impact without burning out. And the work I do is really all about that. And where can you find me? I'm at ipurposepartners.com. That's I as in the letter I, not the I as in I see you. So that's where you can find me, and I hope they answered your questions.
You did. I think it was great. And thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. iPurpose Partners. So let's dive right into it. Campfire Leaders, Lessons for Leaders. One, just curious real quick, the name Campfire Leaders, where does that come from? I think I know because I reviewed the book a bit, but talk to us about that name. And then feel free to dive, set us up. What's inside this book? Why is it important, possibly today more than ever? But I'm curious. Campfire Lessons for Leaders. It sounds warm, snuggly, marshmallow at a camp. Talk to us about that.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. You have this memory of like childhood campfires or campfires that you've been around. And there's stories have been told since the beginning of human history around campfires. And my brand it's so on brand for me because I have a podcast called The Virtual Campfire. And so this is where it all
Virtual Campfire is the name of the podcast. Let's get that out. Please go see it, everybody. Virtual Campfire. Go ahead, Tony.
Yeah. So the book itself, this idea of Campfire Lessons for Leaders, really came from some of the stories that I heard from the people who had came on my show. And I realized that through all their journeys, you know, the more we look back and understand our past, they can be used as really fuel to propel us forward. If we don't really understand our stories, if we don't understand ourselves, it's hard to move forward and to also connect with others. So that's what Campfire Lessons is about, is evoking that idea of the intimacy and the depth of exploring our stories that allows us to move forward. And just one quick thing I'll mention is that originally, when I went on the journey of becoming, starting the podcast, I had this idea of creating a space called Divergent Minds, Convergent Hearts, which was all about bringing people think differently together, sharing stories, and then leaving feeling connected. So I feel like I've now come full circle because that's what I'm doing with the book and also with some of the workshops I'm doing now.
I love that. So, Tony, let's hone in right on that point or take it wherever you want. I know there's a lot of important points, so feel free to take this wherever you want. But that thing caught my eye. You know, we're leaders. Usually this indicates toward business, even though you could be a leader in many different ways. But let's focus on business and our past, how it impacts, sets us up. You're the expert in this for today. Feel free. I'm going to sit back. I'm not going to relax, but I'm going to sit back a bit and give you that space. Feel free to give us that snippet, that TED Talk, as it were, what this means. Talk to the leaders right now. Pour your heart into us.
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, I'll just say that there's oftentimes we are only thinking about what's happening next and get frustrated sometimes when we get stuck or we can't communicate well with others. And so one of the things that we have to think about is, why are we not connecting? Why are we not able to communicate well with others? And so I get people to stop and say, okay, well, let's get to unearth, look back and understand, why do we do what we do? What are the things that have gotten us to where we are? You can't live in the past, but you have to understand your past and understand what got me to being the person I am. And oftentimes it's because we haven't really reconciled with the journey we've been on. It might have been, the moment that we went through a traumatic event. It could have been, navigating a cancer diagnosis, or, surviving cancer, or having lost a loved one. And those events shape us. And we can't just kind of say, okay, that happened, now I'm moving on. You have to say, why has this changed how I lead today? And I worked for many years in the biotech industry, which is, just so many stories where they're connected to, I built this company because I want to save the child that, is diagnosed with a rare disease. And we want to now save children like this one, or my child, or, my loved ones who had this diagnosis. And so those heartstrings start to pull on us, and they drive us forward. When we know that that's the message that we're connected to, we have to tell other people, here's who I am, and this is why I do what I do.
I love that. Here's who I am, and this is why I do what I do. I suspect, Tony, that there's a number of leaders who do that very well. Can you talk to the person that's still, and let me know if this makes sense, the person that's still stuck in the past? And the one thing that I'm seeing here that you have in there, 6 questions to ask yourself if you want to rewrite your story. You may not have them all in front of you right now. So, but if you do, that could be something that lends to this, or something else. Feel free to take it. But talk to that person who's like, Tony, I'm a leader, and quietly, secretly, even I'm leading, people don't know I struggle. And we all do, Tony. Can you talk to that if that question makes sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And so I think the starting point is like, what is it that you're experiencing now that's holding you back? What are some things that you would like to see differently in your current world? And how is it that you've created this situation that you're in right now? How has your past potentially shaped where you are right now? And I think one of the things you can do is, before you start to move into the direction of like just taking the next step, just pause. I mean, oftentimes it's so hard for us to do that because we're always thinking next. Let's do. Yeah, exactly. Right. Myself too. And I think that's what we need to do, is pause and be able to give ourselves the space to think. And to feel, which is another part of this, which we don't necessarily give enough credit to. And so when we do that and allow ourselves to really, lean into the moment and say, yeah, I haven't really thought about, why I feel stuck right now, why I decided to do the things I'm doing, or, really even the moments that, a year ago when I was in the pandemic, that I was so frustrated because I couldn't connect with other people, that I didn't reconcile with that moment. So it's taking a moment to really think about that, write about it, talk about it, and then having conversations outwardly about that. And I'll just share in this moment, there's 3 C's I talk about in the book, which I'll share right now.
Please.
There's a curiosity, a connection, and a compassion. The 3 C's that are internal, but also external. Once you're curious about yourself, compassionate with yourself, and connected to yourself, then you can start to unearth the who, the what, and the when, and then move outwards to start to have that curiosity, connection, and compassion for others.
I love that. And I'm curious, Tony, what happens for the leaders who are not doing that? This is your body of work. You connect with leaders. Again, everybody, we're talking to Tony Martignetti of Campfire Lessons for Leaders, Campfire Lessons for Leaders. And Tony, by the way, one more time, give us, and I guess they can go on Amazon and look for this or other sources, but what's your website, preferred website? Tell us that one more time, please.
Yes, ipurposepartners.com. And if the book is available everywhere, Amazon, any bookstores, you can find it. So.
I love it. Yes, thank you. And I was going to ask you, Tony, talk to what's the problem if we don't do this? You talk to leaders, and I think thank you for allowing me to throw 1,000 questions at you. Answer whichever one you want.
Rapid fire.
I appreciate it. There's being in charge. Tony was promoted. He's leading 5 people in a cat. I guess he's a leader in the largest sense of the word. But leaders versus being in charge, the boss. So I guess that's question one. And a question second I want to throw at you, and I'll try to ask you again, is just what happens to leaders who don't do what you're saying, who don't think about their past? So 2 different questions. Answer it as you wish, please.
Yeah, it's twofold. Number one, internally, that person starts to feel disconnected and burnt out because they're doing a lot of things themselves. They're trying to work really hard to put their message out in the world to lead others, and people aren't connecting with that. They're not feeling it. And so they're putting energy and effort into it, and people aren't feeling it. So that's definitely a big part of not connecting with who you are and doing it in the right way has you putting a lot more effort into trying and failing to lead effectively. And number two is that other people tend to not really, feel this sense that this person's not connected or being authentic to them, to others. Mm-hmm. And they see a facade. They see that we're not showing up fully. And when we don't show up fully, there's this immediate response people have is that this person's just trying to fake it till they make it, or they're trying to put up all of these barriers and they're not letting us in. And I'm sure they'll get by for a while, but eventually what happens is that guard gets put down and other people will see it. So the best thing we can do is have that inside and the outside reflect more fully. And it doesn't mean you have to let all your dirty laundry out or, be this person who's just like, yeah. But you want to make sure that there's some resonance between who we are and who we are representing to others.
Wow, who we are and what we're representing. Can you dive into that part a bit deeper, Tony? Who we are and what we're representing to others. Talk more about that, please.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I see a lot of leaders who, especially female leaders, who try to show up and say like, well, I got to be tough. I have to be this tough person because everyone around me expects that of me. There can't be any emotion in the room. Because if I cry or if I have, if I show them that I have a soft side, then they'll eat me alive, right?
Well, but Tony, isn't that true in a little bit? I'm not going to turn this into a CNN crossfire debate here, but isn't that true to a degree, or at least that's what we think, Tony? That where does that stand? The weakness, the vulnerability, or maybe that's what you addressed earlier, doing it too much. Maybe it falls into that bucket. Can you just keep going? Yeah.
Yeah, we don't want to have, we don't want to be like a sobbing mess for sure. But what we want to do is we want to show people our passion, that we care. What do we stand for? And what would we get animated in the room for, right? Like, and if people don't know who we are, then what we become is robots. And we become these people who are emotionless, robots that just show up in the room and don't really care or show we care for others. So what we need to be able to do is show that, when things don't work out as planned, we don't have to, throw a tantrum, but what we can do is like, yeah, this is not going, as planned, and it is what it is. And hey, now it's time for us to think about different plans. And, it's upsetting, sure. But, they want to look to a leader who can be able to show their full range of who they are, not like someone who's a stoic, person who can just be a stone. We want someone who can show that they have the ability to be resilient in the face of chaotic situations, that they're, showing their soft side. And that's not a weakness. It's actually showing them as a humble and also a strong leader.
And I guess part of it is, Tony, I'm guessing, again, you're the expert, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm guessing part of it is that we've all been shown, the TVs and movies. For example, the hard guy in the movie has a gun and smokes a cigarette and curses like a sailor. Oh, just metaphorically, you know what I mean? Like over time, that's what we think that's gung-ho and he's going to kick butt and win the war or whatever the thing we see, G.I. Joe, whatever, but maybe part of us, we've just been shown that example. So that's what we know. And we need to see more of, again, Jack Welch, great guy, and others, but more of, hey, listen, my name is Tony. I like to wear pink flower on my shirt or whatever, and I care about you, but we're still going to sell. You get what I'm trying to say, Tony? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It's like, to borrow a term from, I think it's Vishen Lakhiani, who wrote a book called The Badass and the Buddha. It's like this person who can be like the badass in the room and be able to kind of like, make shit happen, pardon my French, but also at the same time, be the calm presence in the room that allows people to say, yeah, I feel grounded in this space. That's one thing I'll point out is like, when I got into the work that I'm doing now, people used to say that to me that like, well, you're very grounding. Like every time I'm in the room with you, I feel like I'm very grounded and present, but you're also an expansive thinker, someone who gets me to like see anything's possible. And I'm like, cool. And those are kind of two ends of a spectrum. And we're always navigating two parts of a spectrum. And that is natural. We're always going to need to balance some compassion and accountability, some, focus on self and other always. And I think that's what a lot of the work that I'm, talk about in the book and in my work in general is about making sure we're not too much into one area or another, but we ensure that we're bringing our full selves, and that means our full capacity as leaders into the room.
I think that is proud. I like that word grounded, Tony, because I think it does represent somebody who can be, I was going to say like us, but you seem a bit more Zenish than I am to some degree. Maybe that's limiting beliefs talking in me, but seeing something in you that I desire, that's a compliment. But meaning you seem like a chill, fun. My friend Seth Godin comes to mind. He has that soft voice, but he's a total leader. He's a total, you feel safe with him, but he's not screaming around the room and saying, "You're fired, you're fired, you're fired." There's a Tony, listen, in this book, so many things your team has sent me, and I'm looking at the power of storytelling, flashpoints, divergent mind that you've mentioned, question to ask yourself, cognitive consonants, so much more. I'm seeing here, inner architect, so many things in Campfire Lessons for Leaders. Tony, any last thing that you want to leave us with? Anything that we should pick out? Anything that you want to tell the Rundown with Ramon audience, or whatever's on your heart? I know, again, it's a big question. We could talk for hours about this, but any last minute things you want to share with us, Tony?
I do want to share one thing, and it's one of the lessons that I'll just kind of bring out to the surface. And one of the chapters is about believing in others and having a belief in others. And I think that's one of the things that I uncovered in a lot of people I interviewed, and how important it is that, when people believe in you, you rise to the occasion. And I think that's such an important aspect of how people become great in the world, is looking at the folks who are rising up behind you or who have been before you. Oftentimes their belief in you helps you to see your potential. And I think that's such a beautiful concept. And I think we need to be looking out for that. It's to say, who has shown that they believe in me, and how have I been able to become who I am because of their belief?
I think it's powerful. Tony, one more time, can you tell us their website? And again, just to tell people as a teaching moment, people say, Ramon, you asked him 3 times already. Well, you know what? You may be watching this whole episode, but if you're like me, you scroll through, kids get distracted, you lose sight. What was that website? You can see. Now you don't have to go backwards, people. Now you don't have to hit reverse. So I'm just telling people, because in my mind, I can hear some people, he said it again. It's because I appreciate that when I'm listening to these things, I don't have to go back. I didn't hear it the first or second time. So Tony, one more time, how can we reach you? And I've already said the name of the book, but one more time, Tony, tell us.
Sure thing. It's ipurposepartners.com, and you can find me there or on LinkedIn as well.
I love it. And that's Tony Martignetti. And again, we'll have his name in the show notes, his new book out, Campfire Lessons for Leaders. Definitely check it out. I think you all are seeing here some great content. My name is Ramon Ray. This has been the Rundown with Ramon. Tony, thanks for joining us today. And I hope you all join us at zoneofgenius.com, or just look around for Rundown with Ramon for amazing, cool people like Tony and I. We go to a similar barber as well. If you're curious, we can both give you those tips. Everybody, have a beautiful, blessed day. Thanks for being here on the Rundown with Ramon. Thanks, Tony.